Hello and welcome back to the channel. Okay, so things are escalating very fast at the moment when it comes to the World War III front. The Russians have actually they've captured some British lieutenants in a command center in Ukraine, and what they found there was also a bunch of maps of Russia's strategic nuclear assets. Which so it makes it just obvious that the West is planning, NATO is planning a decapitation strike on Russia, just like they've been expected. The other thing is what the Russian intelligence has also found that the British and NATO is secretly planning on sabotaging Russia's oil tankers. So as you probably know, the deadline for Russia to get a ceasefire before sanctions goes on to them, and big tariffs goes on to their trading partners. Because Russia, their main economy is selling oil, and they're selling oil to the Chinese and to the Iranians and to a lot of different countries in the East, and India. They're buying a lot of Russian oil, and Russia's economy is dependent on that. So their intelligence have now figured out that the West is planning on sabotaging their oil tankers so that the oil can't get to these other countries as part of the retaliation if the deadline is not met on August 8th. Now, I have a strong suspicion that the reason Donald Trump dropped or shortened the time frame of his deadline from 50 days to 8 days is because they got wind of these British commanders being caught in Ukraine with all of those plans, and now they know that the Russians know that they are planning a decapitation strike, just like they did remember a couple of months ago when NATO and the Ukrainians, they smuggled containers full of drones into Russia, and they parked it next to their strategic nuclear aeroplane bases, and they executed a pretty smart attack from there. So this is just more evidence that there's more of that coming, especially when you talk about this rhetoric between Donald Trump and Medvedev about when they openly threatening each other with nuclear war. Donald Trump has now sent nuclear submarines to Russia's waters. And today Russia also announced that they are going to abolish the last final treaty that they have, nuclear treaty, where that actually limits them from the types of nuclear weapons that they can use in the nuclear war. And they said that they're not going to adhere to that, and they're tearing that treaty up today as well. The Russians are also sending 4 nuclear bombers closer to the West, onto the front lines. They are also about to test their Oreshnik missile system, which is a hypersonic missile system that the West cannot shoot down. They're going to test that around between the 4th and the 8th of August, so which is also a very the date coincides exactly with when Donald Trump's ultimatum is running out for Russia. So it seems like things are really heading coming to a head here. I believe, or I think, I don't know what you think, maybe put in the comments what you think. I think Donald Trump, to get back to the British generals that got caught in Ukraine with those plans, maps of Russia's strategic nuclear assets, those guys are probably being tortured right now, and the Russians are going to get information out of them. And I believe that that's why Donald Trump could have dropped the time frame to 8 days from 60 days, because they know that those guys are going to squeal, and they're going to reveal all the NATO's plans that they have for Russia, and then there's not going to be a surprise anymore. So I don't think they want peace, they want war. That's what NATO wants. They're encroaching onto Russia's borders. Russia's oil refineries are being struck with drones. They're burning as we speak. The Russians are sending all the nuclear weapons to Kaliningrad and into Belarus. and in the front lines in the Ukraine war, close to Europe. And the US is sending nuclear missiles to the UK. They're also sending Tomahawk missiles, which is nuclear capable, to Germany. So this whole thing stinks, and it seems like it's being set up for a huge confrontation, a military confrontation. Again, the United States is a falling superpower, and they need to get rid of Russia, because if they get rid of Russia with their trillions of dollars in minerals and gas and all the natural resources that they have, the Chinese and the Indians and all of those guys are very dependent on Russia's resources, especially the oil. They're getting cheap oil from Russia, and that is a good way to get at the Chinese as well, because the Chinese are the big dogs. That's the end goal for America, that they want to take the Chinese out in order to protect the American superpower. So if another reason for Russia, if Russia falls, then China's got a big problem, is because of the military alliance that they have together. Russia is battle hardened. They probably got the most battle ready and most lethal and military in the world at the moment. And yeah, the Chinese, if they want to take on the Chinese and the Russians can help the Chinese, then there's going to be a problem for the West. But if the Russians are taken out, all of those resources, the oil and the resources, are in the Western hands. The same if Iran is taken out, then the Chinese are all alone, and that's going to give the West a much better chance to take on China. So yeah, that's the update for today. Let's hope the deadline is in today is in 4 days. All of these nuclear war rhetoric is going on right now. Both countries, NATO and Russia, is strategically positioning their nuclear weapons. They're openly threatening each other online. Plans are being interrupted by the Russian intelligence agencies, and I would suggest that you guys prepare. At minimum, just have at least a few weeks worth of food, canned food in your house, and water. Get torches for your batteries, just so that you can ride out something in case something bad happens. Alright, so that's it for today. I will see you tomorrow.